Sitting down to protest, it was finally time to stand up and march, to voice the hopes and dreams of equal rights that after a century of struggle were still missing. On August 28, 1963, about 250,000 people marched to Washington, D.C. to do just that. About 75 to 80% of the marchers were African American, while the rest were sympathizers of the cause. It was there and then that Martin Luther King Jr. delivered "I Have a Dream," words of hope and inspiration that will forever echo down the path of history. A year later, King graced the cover of Time magazine as Man of the Year. The 7-page article in Time underlined key moments in his civil rights leadership, like his meeting with President Lyndon B. Johnson, or his 11-day stay in jail in Birmingham, Alabama, for his campaign activities. A year later, he became the youngest person to win the Nobel Peace Prize at 35 years of age. After the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was passed, outlawing segregation and other forms of racial inequality, Dr. King turned his activism from racial to economic inequality, urging the government to invest in rebuilding America's poorest neighborhoods and communities. On March 29, 1968, King came to Memphis, Tennessee to support a group of sanitation workers who were on strike for better wages and equal treatment. It was here that King delivered his last speech, "I have been to the mountaintop."
My eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
Some saw his words as a prophecy of his own departure. In his speech, King communicated an attitude of fulfillment and tranquility, even as he spoke about his own death. 6 days later, he was assassinated as he stood on the balcony of his hotel room in Memphis. The gunman, James Earl Ray, was sentenced to 99 years in prison and died from illness in 1998 while serving his term. Martin Luther King Jr., however, still lives in the ongoing dialogue for social change.
I say to you today, my friends, that in spite of the difficulties and frustrations of the moment, I still have a dream.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
I have a dream that my 4 children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the contents of their character.
I have a dream that one day the state of Alabama will be transformed. Little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls and walk together as sisters and brothers.
I have a dream today.
This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with a new meaning.
My country 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty. Of thee I sing.
Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride.
From every mountainside, let freedom ring.
But my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
The first Martin Luther King Jr. Day was celebrated on January 20th, 1986. Dr. King's whole life was dedicated to the fight for civil rights. But who could have known that after his death, setting aside a day in his honor would also be a hard-fought battle? Opponents cited technical reasons, such as the fact that King never held public office, or financial reasons, such as the cost of holiday pay for government employees. Some notable opponents were then Senator John McCain and President Ronald Reagan himself, who reluctantly signed it into law because, according to him, Congress was bent on it. Coretta Scott King was instrumental in the push to pass the bill. Martin Luther King Jr. Day always falls on a Monday, on the 3rd week of January each year. On this day, schools across the nation are closed to honor this man, like Martin Luther King Jr. Elementary School in Los Angeles. On Martin Luther King Jr. Day, we are reminded of how different our world is from Dr. King's. On the bus or at a restaurant, We can sit wherever we wish, regardless of our skin color. On the playground, black, white, brown, red, yellow children can hold hands, unaware that the fact that their unawareness of that fact is a result of decades of activism. We now have a black president who just entered his second term, and he had this to say about Dr. King in his message to the people on Martin Luther King Jr. Day this year.
And he inspired a generation with his example. In the pulpit at this church, in his letters from an Alabama prison cell, and as the voice leading the historic March on Washington, Dr. King's commitment to making this country everything he knew it could be never wavered. He answered the call to love and serve humanity. And that's why today stands as a national day of service in his memory. Remembering what Dr. King taught us is especially important now as we work to restore the middle class in this country and provide a strong foundation for every American working to get there. As Dr. King reminded us many years ago, life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? Today, we are all called upon to answer that question and to ask.
Today, the bus Rosa Parks rode on that momentous day can be seen at the Henry Ford Museum in Dearborn, Michigan. Visitors can reimagine the moment from her vantage point. Rosa Parks, the woman who pushed King into the forefront of the civil rights movement, died in 2005. And Coretta Scott King, the life partner always by his side, died a year later. After King's death, Coretta Scott King, a longtime activist herself, kept the torch for social equality burning in his absence. She fought for a variety of issues, including women's rights, LGBT rights, and world peace. To respond to criticism that she should not be advocating for the rights of the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transsexual community, she reminded the world of what her husband stood for: the equality of all people, from all backgrounds, in all places. As long as there is injustice, the torch Martin Luther King Jr. carried with his entire being must still burn.